really hard when you look normal, you don't look sick, but you feel so terrible. You never really realize how important your health is until it gets taken away from you.
Hi everyone, so my name is Mira. I've never really made a video like this, but I kind of just wanted to sit down and talk about my journey and my experience with dealing with a misdiagnosed / undiagnosed chronic illness. If you know me personally, you know that this has definitely been the most challenging experience I've ever had. From being a totally normal, healthy college student to becoming so sick and so tired and so weak that I almost had to withdraw from my second semester of classes. This has definitely been a very life-changing experience. I really wish while I was going through it, I would have had some sort of video or someone to give me advice on how to navigate through this. So if you're someone in that position, I hope this video can provide you some comfort, or if you're clicking on this video out of support or pure curiosity, I hope you can take something away from this video. This video will focus mainly on my actual journey through my illness, so how I actually got sick and then how I handled that, my experience along as thought process, but I wanted to provide some context before I got into the actual journey. I am a rising second-year student at Georgia Tech, and I became sick at the end of December of 2018, and I'm still sick right now, which is at the end of July of 2019. So it's been around 7 months, and keep in mind that I did get sick and I continued to be sick while I was away from home as an out-of-state full-time college student. So I was dealing with, adjusting with college and being a full-time student with the academic rigor of Georgia Tech, while I was dealing with the physical and mental health problems of a misdiagnosed / undiagnosed chronic illness. So those were some of the other external factors of all of this that made it also challenging. And also, prior to December of 2018, I would consider myself a very healthy person. I ate pretty well, I exercised pretty regularly, and I didn't really have any pre-existing health conditions, so that's why I said that I really never would have expected this to happen to me. I'm just gonna get started with December 2018, where my health kind of just went downhill from there. So the beginning of December of 2018 was the end of my first semester of college. It was a little bit stressful at the end of finals and everything, but I was taking care of my body as good as possible. So I came home to California where I live, and I was pretty exhausted. I was having pretty bad sleep and fatigue, but it all started on December 27th. And pretty out of nowhere, I suddenly felt super nauseous, and then following that was 6 days of absolute misery. Very feverish, I had chills, a really bad headache. I barely ate anything for 6 days. I obviously would try my best as possible to be in the best shape, so I was trying to eat, drinking lots of liquids, but I was pretty much bedridden. And I have been sick before, of course, but this was nothing like I'd ever felt before. My body just felt completely off. So I went to the doctor, and she told me, you're probably just run down from college. It's probably just a germ you caught from there. Like, I'm sure you're fine. But I told her, I've never felt this way before, so can I just get some sort of test or just some blood test run? And I was really persistent, so she tested me for strep throat, and then I got some other blood tests done, but the only thing that came back with something was that I was critically vitamin D deficient, which could explain why I was super tired the 2 weeks prior, but it didn't really explain the viral sickness. So she just told me to go home and rest, and if I didn't get better, then to come back. So I just went home. I still felt like absolutely terrible, and actually on December 31st, which was New Year's Eve, I actually went to the ER because that night around 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. I was in excruciating pain. My neck and my head were so stiff I could barely move it as I was trying to fall asleep, and I was just panicking at that point. Everything hurt. I could not fall asleep. My chills were so bad that my whole bed was shaking, and I just remember being so scared. Of course, at the ER, they're making sure that, like in anything life-threatening, so of course they're like, you don't have meningitis or anything, so just go home and take some ibuprofen or whatever. So I went home. Over the next couple of days, I did see a decrease in like the chills, the nausea, the fever. But the weird thing that happened was, while I seemed to recover from this viral infection or this viral illness that I did have, the other symptoms my body just never recovered from. So the headaches, the fatigue, and the sleeping problems just stuck with me. So I ended up going back to Georgia Tech for my second semester of college, but I just went back feeling so off. But of course, being a full-time student, especially my first year with academics, the first thing on my mind, I said, you know, I really can't afford to be sick. My schedule was 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I'm a design major, so most of my classes are project-oriented, meaning that I kind of had to be in the studio building to get all my projects done, so it really limited the time that I was able to spend in my dorm. So I said, you know, I really cannot afford to be tired, not sleeping, and have a headache all the time. So I kind of just said, you know, Mira, you gotta push through and kind of pretend that you're okay. So I went back to school. Even though I had recovered from the viral infection, I still had these insomnia, headache, and fatigue symptoms. So January went by, like, my academics were going well and the symptoms weren't too bad, but February is when it started to go downhill. So in February, my fatigue had started worsening. Of course, the fatigue was hugely caused by not sleeping. So when I said I had sleeping problems from December, it's not like, oh, I'm a college student, like, of course I'm not getting sleep because I'm studying all the time and I feel tired. It's more of, I had very disrupted sleep. So no matter how early I went to sleep or no matter how late I woke up, I would wake up 5 to 10 times within the night, meaning I was getting pretty much no deep sleep. So when I woke up, it pretty much felt like I didn't sleep at all. So I would be going to sleep at 11 p.m., which is really early for a college student, but I'd be waking up and feeling so exhausted, like I slept maybe an hour or two, but I would try to get myself out of bed so I'd be on time for my classes. But with the sleeping problems and the fatigue, it would be so hard to get throughout the day, especially when my classes were ending at 7 p.m. And as the fatigue worsened, I started to really notice a huge difference. It was not only making it hard for me to just stay awake throughout the day, but my mobility really started to decrease too. Georgia Tech's campus is pretty small, honestly. The farthest walk I ever had to do was probably around 20 minutes, but I couldn't even find myself being able to walk 10 minutes without having to take a break. So I started actually having to take a bus a quarter of a mile to my classes. I couldn't stay awake. I couldn't walk to my classes. I felt like every day was such a struggle. I could barely keep up with even going around to my classes, so how could I even keep up with the work in the class as well as the work that I had to do after the class?
Like adding on physical stress, because it's just very hard to deal with and you can't really ignore it. It really just affects my mood, my work ethic, and everything. And you know, I'm still enrolled in all my classes and I'm expected to complete all my work, especially with these kind of chronic illnesses. When they're internal, I look normal. People think I'm fine. My classmates are like, you don't look sick. Professors probably don't believe me because I go to class and I seem normal, but inside it's just a very big struggle every single day, deciding like if I can make it through the day, if I need to push myself more, forcing myself to go study for 8 hours even though I'm literally on the verge of mental breakdown.
So this is when I started to find a doctor in the local area. I started to see a general doctor and then we got a lot of tests done, but nothing really came back positive. This is when my headache started to worsen a ton. Started to actually feel like a jabbing pain in the back of my head. And on the Monday after spring break, I actually ended up going to the hospital because my head was in so much pain that I honestly felt like I was slipping in and out of consciousness. And I remember going to my doctor and she told me that it was probably just a tension headache and that I should just take some ibuprofen and that I would be okay. And as you can see, there's kind of a cycle of what the doctors have been telling me, you know, it'll be okay, that it's probably just stress or something psychological, and to take an ibuprofen will be okay. I've been doing everything as they've told me, and it hasn't gone away. So that's when I was getting really worried and thinking, you know, there's probably something more serious. So we went to the infectious disease specialist. He was testing me for a lot of things, and actually one of the Lyme tests came back positive. And if you didn't know, Lyme is a bacterial disease that's carried by a tick, and it didn't really make sense to me because I had never been, you know, outside in the wilderness, not really had a rash or anything that would indicate that I would have Lyme disease, but I had a lot of the symptoms. And he said, you know, just take the 3-week antibiotics. And over these 3 weeks, at first I didn't really see improvements, but I started to see a lot of side effects. And this is also when it started to get a lot worse too. Nausea, light sensitivity, and my headache started to increase. So the light sensitivity was associated with the headache, so I started having to wear sunglasses all the time. I even started having to wear sunglasses in my classroom, and I remember my classmates would always be like, Mira, why are you wearing sunglasses inside? And I would be like, I literally can't see anything without them. Like, my head would throb while looking at the projector in my math class if I wasn't wearing any sunglasses. This was also when my headache started to even worsen. And that, on a side note, is what is the biggest symptom that I'm still dealing with now. So I've been dealing with this continuous 24/7 head pain in my head for the past 3 months. Another huge side effect of the antibiotics was nausea. And if you've ever felt nauseous in your life, it's not a fun time, especially when you're trying to go to class and focus. It's really hard to do that when you feel like you're about to throw up all the time. So my routine at school pretty much was being so tired that it took me 30 minutes to get out of bed, taking the bus to class because I couldn't walk, trying to sit through my lecture, but leaving 15 minutes through the class because I felt like I was going to throw up, sitting on the bathroom floor of my math class lecture for the next 40 minutes as I was waiting for the lecture to end. Then when it ended, I would get my stuff, I would bus back to my dorm and skip the rest of my classes for that day. And that pretty much went on for the rest of the 2 weeks that I was on the antibiotics. And this was pretty much the worst time of the semester because it was around week 12 of 16, which was kind of toward the end. So this was really hard because I was missing all my classes, and I'm a really hardworking person, so I wanted to go to my classes, and that's why I got out of bed every day, because I wanted to go. And college, it's super important to go to your lecture because otherwise you're not going to know what's going to be on your test. So I tried my best to go, but I'd always have to leave because I just felt so terrible. And I'd end up just going back to my dorm and sitting in the dark because my migraine always got so bad. This was honestly the lowest point of the semester because I honestly didn't know if I would be able to finish because I had worked so hard for the past 12 weeks to get my grades to where they were, and they were pretty high, which is why I was so proud of them and why I wanted to keep them there. But at that point, I also needed to really prioritize my health and make sure that I was taking care of my body. And along with that, this is also where I honestly just became extremely depressed because the antibiotics that I was on made me super sensitive to light, so I pretty much had to stay inside all the time. So from not really being able to go to class and having to stay inside, I pretty much spent all my time in my dorm room. I couldn't really go out and do the normal things a college student could do. So while everyone was out, you know, like living their life and partying, like I was of course sick and sitting inside my room at night on a Friday night. So of course that's not the ideal like first year experience that you would want to have, but of course my health was the most important thing, and I wanted to be able to keep that up while also trying to keep my academics up. So pretty much the rest of the time while I was on my antibiotics, I would just try to rest up, and anytime the nausea subsided, I would try to take that energy and time to catch up on my work. Fortunately, the antibiotics kind of got rid of the chronic fatigue, which was a huge help because the chronic fatigue was pretty much the thing that was making it super hard for me to get around campus and keep myself going. So that was great, but the headache was still there, and then the sleeping problems were still there, and I was still kind of without a diagnosis. But I was still really grateful the fatigue was gone. At this point, there were 2 weeks left in school. I was just trying to push through, finish up the semester and go home and be with my family and try to get everything figured out. So luckily I was super determined. I finished all my courses, got good grades, and I was able to go home, and that's where I am now. So it is July. As I said, it's the end of July, and by no means is my journey over. I kind of didn't talk about the logistics as much, but so I have been dealing with the chronic insomnia since December, and then the continuous persistent headaches since, I want to say, around February. So what that means is that there is a continuous headache in my head 24/7. So sometimes it is a little better, and sometimes it is to the point where I'm basically debilitated. But essentially there's not really a second that I'm pain-free, so that's really changed my life. I want to say that's probably the worst symptom right now. And then the chronic insomnia, which means that I basically wake up every couple of hours. My journey is by no means over. I actually have like 6 doctor appointments this week. I did not get a diagnosis, as you can tell, so I went from having college germs to probably having a viral infection to having Lyme disease, which actually I got a blood test last week and they told me it came back negative, so apparently that was a false positive. So I don't even have Lyme disease, but it did cure the chronic fatigue, which is a good thing. And I still don't know what I have, but at this point I am getting an MRI tomorrow, getting some blood work done to see if there's anything else that's contributing to the root cause. I just really wanted to make this video to kind of summarize like everything that's happened in the past 7 months. Of course, this is by no means a video to kind of like share like how challenging it's been. I just wanted to give some insight on what's been happening. No matter how hard it's been, I was still able to, you know, push through. There were so many days where I, you know, felt so bad and I would cry and have these breakdowns of, you know, why was this happening to me and why did I have to feel like this? But at the end of the day, you just got to keep going through, because I do have faith that, you know, someday, I don't know when, it'll probably not be tomorrow, and I don't know if it'll be next month or next year, but it will get fixed. So that's just kind of my spiel. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it or can take something away from this video. I really wanted to make this for a long time, so I appreciate you listening, and I'll probably make some other videos regarding this subject. My main takeaways have really been to just listen to your body. I think you just know yourself the best, and to keep pushing for what you think you need, and to just be open and be vulnerable, because I think originally I always thought that being strong was always like keeping yourself together and pushing forward, but I think through this journey I've learned that strength does come from vulnerability and knowing when you need to lean on other people for help. It's definitely helped me with that, and that has been a huge part of my coping process. So yeah, I hope you learned something from this video, and thank you so much for listening, and yeah.